Hello and welcome to Columbus Local Podcast. I'm Len D'Amico, and this is episode number 48. Today, it is really a pleasure and an honor to have the Godz here, and we are going to, I think, start with Mark Chatfield. Mark, say hello, please.
Hello, please.
And if you wouldn't mind...
It's kind of like that walk this way thing. Right. Never mind, go ahead. Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind, I rather than me do it, it would be great to hear you introduce the Godz.
Okay, I can do that. To my far right down here is Steve Mitchell on guitar, lead guitar and vocals. To my immediate right is Keith Pickens, our drummer. To my left is Julie Neal, the Queen of Westerville. And directly across from me is Doug Sav Ramey. I'm sorry.
Hey now.
I said you should call yourself Sav Ramey, and then now I forget to call him that. So, yeah.
Oh, and I have a story about that, too.
Oh, no.
Well, let's go.
It's going to be awesome.
Let's jump on that.
You want to hear that story?
Sure, let's go.
All right. Well, let's hear that story. So... You know, and it's funny.
That was hilarious.
I saw this morning that, you know, there was a guy posted right above you, and you were saying some stuff like that. And there's 4 or 5 people that constantly always post, you know, no Eric, no Godz. It's not the same. Godz isn't the same without Eric. And, you know, and I realize and I admire the passion that people have for... you know, what the band was. I do. And, but I think what people fail to understand is what they don't know is that as long as I'm fronting this band, Eric is still very much a part of this band. And the story goes back, way back to 1988 when me and him started working together. And we did a demo. He pretty much sent me out to California, set me up in a place that was his, you know, of course. And, you know, introduced me to a lot of people. He introduced me to Lemmy. He introduced me to Chris Holmes, Ricky Ragman. He introduced me to a lot of people. And it was, you know, he was very, 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 very good to me and a very big part of my career, actually. It's, you know, especially in California. And he introduced me to the right people, and, you know, fortunately I didn't screw it completely up with drugs and alcohol and women. Yeah, I did.
Hold on.
Yeah, I did. But besides that, you know, it's what it is sometimes. So anyway, Eric never called me Doug Savage, okay? I've pretty much, I took that name on about probably 37 years ago when I actually moved to Columbus from Kentucky. And the first band I saw at the Alrosa, thanks to Steve Mitchell over here, but the first band that I saw at the Alrosa was Sweet Savage. And so from that point on, I kind of took on the nickname of Doug Savage. And Eric never called me Doug. He never called me Doug Savage. He never called me anything. He called me Sav from day one. It was Sav, always Sav. Sav, you get more... Are we allowed to use bad words on this or not?
We are. It's rated E, and it's not for everyone. It's explicit language.
Okay,
well... So you're whatever you need to do.
Okay, well, you know, he would always say, Sab, you get more pussy than anybody ever seen in a week. And he was right. But, you know, and that was pretty much a thing. Well, anyway, so you fast forward on to many, 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 many years later, and when I was called to you know, come to the Godz. Well, that's the first thing Mark said. He said, let's change your stage name. And I was like, okay. You know, he said, Sav Ramey. And it was so weird because there was a chill come down over me when I said, and I was just like, Sav, really? We're going to call me Sav. And that was the first thing I thought of was like, Eric never called me anything but Sav. And when Mark brought that up, it was kind of like, this is what it's supposed to be. This is meant to be.
But to Mark's credit, he was talking about the shit you put on you when you've got something. Yeah.
Well,
SALVE.
It goes back to all those chicks in the 80s.
Yeah. Well,
salve.
It did fall out of my pocket.
Yeah.
When we introduced. But yeah, for the story of Sab, there's the story of Sab. But what people, need to realize is that, you really need to open up to this situation, because if you're not wanting to come and see this band because Eric's not a part of it anymore, well, you're wrong. Eric is part of it. He's still part of it. He's 100% part of it. And the thing of it is what people don't realize was this was a plan also of him. This was something that, that he brought up, and he said from as early as back as 1990, and the thing of it is that, what people don't realize, you see this scar right here, right, Lynn? You see this scar right here on my hand?
I do.
Okay. Well, that's from Eric. And Eric has the same one on his right hand. And basically, he cut me, scared me to death. He cut me, cut him, and we become blood brothers in 1990. And, a lot of people know that, a lot of people don't. But for those people who don't, when you're coming and seeing the Godz now, Eric's very much a part of this show.
I didn't know that. Did you know that?
What?
He's got Eric's blood in him. Did you know that?
I did not
How
know
the
that.
hell is he alive?
That's a good question. You been checked lately?
You got that dead finger thing going on.
The funny thing about it is when I actually did share that with you guys that you don't realize or remember or whatever like that, I said that I was pretty sure I had hepatitis.
We didn't know you were serious, but now we're all worried.
Yeah. So
because everybody here has hugged you.
Yeah. So, I mean, So yeah, how you guys doing? Eric Moore over here.
Glad you're on that side.
You sure was?
Sav, thank you so much for sharing that. And I honestly, I was at the show Friday, and clearly the historic aspects of the Godz, the band, and Eric Moore himself is very much what we observe in the audience in that show. The embodiment of the history, but also the material. You guys covered some of the original material, but you also have some new material as well. Mm-hmm. That is really, really representative of the DNA, but it's all of your creativity that brings it all together and presents it as such within the live show of what you describe of the history of the players still being there as part of that DNA. How do you feel about that, Mark?
That's a good question. Actually, I agree. I mean, when we went to when Keith and I originally started to do this a couple of years before the plague hit, we started doing this, and then the plague hit and we stopped. And in the meantime, I was still living in Las Vegas. And in the meantime, I had moved back to Columbus, which made this whole thing a lot easier. I was still planning on doing it, but I'd have to commute back and forth. I've got like a gazillion Southwest airline miles, so I'd be able to come back and forth a lot. But being here, of course, makes it a lot easier. But it was always a not trying to be, nobody's going to really be, Glenn, Eric, Bob, and myself, we were what we were, and it was a little different than this, so it will never exactly be equal. But what we wanted to do was keep the concept. Everything we did was within the concept of the band, but done our own way. And we've just kind of got lucky with the creative juices, because we had no idea either. I think the first song we did was it Crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I told the story on stage the other night about I actually wrote all that music 23 years ago. And on the album, the intro part of that is my original garage recording for 23 years ago until we go into the fast part. I added a bass guitar to it at home afterwards, but I actually had given those lyrics to a couple of different people that I'd play with in the meantime, and nobody really either had interest or cared, came up with anything. I gave him to Doug, and he starts singing, Crazy Raise Me Right, like right away. I'm going, man, that's it. So we've, it's once again, it's just been whenever anybody brings in, we just kind of go with it. Everybody puts in their little pieces here and there, and then we try to develop them as we go. Other than that song hasn't changed a bunch because it was pretty much already done except for the lyrics and the melody line. But everything else, has gone through a lot of transitions. From what we started, and they're even going through more at rehearsals now because it takes time for songs to develop, and we don't have a lot of stage time with some of these songs. So yeah, it's just been luck or whatever, or just the right people with the same goal, and it makes it much easier for us to write and to play together. We're still feeling out each other on stage a bit. And not playing from November until last week didn't help that situation a whole lot. We're starting to relearn each other a little bit because that's a building process, and there's no experience like stage experience. You can stand in a rehearsal hall for a year. You can stand in a dress rehearsal hall for a year. But until you get out there actually in front of people and it feels different and sounds completely different, that's where it gels. That's where it gels or it doesn't gel. Yeah. That's where you figure out things to do and not to do at that point. And so far so good. I'm super proud of this band. Everybody's great. Everybody's responsible. Everybody does their job really, really well. And if I don't want to harp on the Eric thing a whole bunch more, but I like to think I know Eric probably better than most anyone, other than maybe his his ex-wife, and he would be proud of this band. Everything that we're doing, including having a female backup singer, including Julie, and we use a track on one of the songs that has the horns on it that we used on the record. He would have loved that if he could. When we were the original Godz, if we could have had a backup singer section, 2 or 3 girls backup singer, and a horn section, he would have been all over it. That's exactly what he wanted this band to be. And I'm just, being the only original member that's left, I'm just trying to carry that on as to what we did, because it was a good idea at the time. We just never, never.
You called it like a rock and roll, a hard rock version of Sha Na Na.
That's basically
what
he
wanted.
Yeah. Yep.
Couldn't afford it. I mean, nobody could.
No, and we didn't stay together long enough. It's hard to. It's even still hard for me to digest the fact that we formed that band, lost 2 members, added another member, played cover tunes in clubs, started drawing record crowds at the Agora, did 3 tours and 2 albums in just under 3 years. That's how fast that all happened.
Flash. It was a rocket ship. Yep,
it was.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of that, though, that spirit, though, again, I think we can just say is still, to your point, Sav, that it's still in the music. I was lucky enough Friday to purchase one of the white vinyl albums. I encourage everyone to go out and get this record. I mean, I think it's streamable, but I think having vinyl, if you're a vinyl fan like Beth and I are, we have our own vinyl collection like many, but it's just really, even the white vinyl, right? So that's meaningful to the Godz, right? In what way was the color, with the decision for that?
The original concept, Eric's original concept for the Godz was to have all white equipment, which we did. The original band, we actually had 2 drummers, Glenn Cadeline and Hayward Law, and they both had complete white drum sets. We had made our own speaker cabinets, these big, ugly white things with 2 15-inch speakers, and the stage was just littered with them, and they just sounded like ass. They were terrible. But we spent we had a band house on Summit Street, and I lived there. Eric lived there. Mike Adams lived there, and some of our road crew, and anywhere between 10 and 30 other people at any given time. A lot of people in and out there. And that's where we'd get up and rehearse every morning at 10 o'clock in this wet, damp, old stone basement. It was awful down there. Then when we got done rehearsing, out came the spray paint. And we would be down there, just getting high on spray paint fumes and painting all the gear. So originally the gear was all going to be white, and we were going to only use white light. That was going to be the whole thing. Part of that came into play, part of it didn't. And it's kind of funny because when we got those cabinets were terrible, so we ended up using other stuff over the years, or over the months even. And then when we got our record deal, we got an advance, and we bought some new equipment. And when the first tour started, we hadn't had time to get it all white. So we're out there playing with opening for Angel, and part of our stuff was white and part of our stuff wasn't white. So we had to wait for a break to get out the spray paint again.
Oh, man.
So that's where that concept came from, and that's why we wanted to do the first release on white vinyl.
It's
Very
it's
limited
really special.
numbers.
Yeah, it's 100.
I felt fortunate to have one.
Yep.
Yeah. And so Steve Mitchell's been kind of quiet over here. But you know why? I think because you guys had that show Friday, and then his band Jackass Genius was gigging last night, right?
Yep.
So how you feeling?
Probably a little tired, When you were younger, you could do this stuff pretty easy and barely sleep at all. But now, if you play twice on the weekend, I'm probably pretty worthless for about a day and a half, So
It's all good.
yeah.
Everybody in this band has ties from the past. And what's your tie?
Well, in I think it was 1972, my parents moved our family to Grove City, and when we moved in, the house behind us, the street behind us, Mark lived there with his parents, and so I remember the first time I seen Mark, he was playing at Grove City Fair with his band Zarquith, and in one of the breaks, somebody introduced me to him, or he come up to me and goes, "So you're that kid that moved in that plays guitar, huh?" But we went to high school together. Mark was 2 years. He was a senior when I met him, and I was a sophomore at Grove City High School. So we went. I remember we played in the Senior Follies together, Senior Follies talent show. We played Beach Boys songs.
Beach Boys songs. With a bunch of guys that graduated with me, all these jocks trying to sing Barbara Ann, which was just awful but funny as hell. Yeah. So, did you play bass?
I played bass.
That's right.
Oh, wow.
I played bass. Mark played guitar in it. I remember you went on stage. You had swim trunks on, and you had a life raft around you, like this little. That has like a seahorse on it or something like that.
Are there any pictures?
I don't know. I've never seen any pictures of that, but there is a great picture in one of the yearbooks of Steve playing in some combo thing at high school, playing bass again.
Yeah.
And he's got one of those giant ass plaid bow ties on. Oh God! And probably cuffed bell bottoms.
That's probably right. And so, we would go to, we went to concerts, and we always, of course, talked music and bought records, go out to record stores, and just that kind of stuff a lot,
We used to jam in your basement, too. He and his brother used to have, I don't mean to interrupt, but he and his brother used to do these jams down in their basement, and their friends from the where they used to live south of Grove City used to come, like Bill Lewandowski and that drummer Greg Smith, I think was his name.
Yeah.
And people, and we'd spend the afternoon just down in their basement jamming, and we just kind of go ahead.
Yeah, that was the kind of stuff we did.
So you get that far back.
Because we were like-mindedness, so I think that, we're both very interested in playing guitar and everything.
We've known each other for 51 years.
That's unbelievable.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think one of my biggest ties to the Godz thing is I remember this like it was yesterday. I was standing in the kitchen at the house, and Mark calls on the phone, and he said to me, I'm quitting Ohio State University, because he was going to Ohio State. And he said, I'm going to join a band with Eric Moore called the Godz. And he said, I'm going to play flying V guitars and use Ampeg V4 amplifiers.
Wow. Mark, do you have any of those amps from back then?
I do not. I have one that was a later one from that. I don't have any of the original. I do have the original. I have a Les Paul that I had in the Godz, and I still have my original Painless Expression red K guitar. I still have that one. But those amps, the V4s, we ended up trading away for other stuff. And then the Marshall that I used for like the first Godz album and part of the second Godz album ended up getting stolen. That head and cabinet both got stolen. So other than that, I don't think there's anything left over from any of that stuff. I don't know. The only person that still has their original Godz equipment is Bob Hill, who was the second guitarist in that band after Mike and Hayward got killed, but he never gets rid of anything. He's still got everything he had back then. So,
and do you still stay in touch with Bob?
On Facebook. I mean, we've talked on the phone a couple of times. When we did the original Godz reunion thing, I think was around 94 maybe. We did a live album at the El Rosa, Eric, Glenn, and I, and invited Bob. Bob didn't have any interest. I think he was living in California then. Lives in Texas now. He had no interest in doing it, so we had Eric Mock come in, who had been playing with Eric in a version of the Godz or the Eric Moore band, whichever it was at that point in time. So he filled in for Bob, and then we just stay in contact on Facebook, and that's pretty much that's pretty much it. I ran into him once at a guitar show in Texas, and that was the last time I saw him, and that was probably in the 90s somewhere, late 90s. So yeah.
Gotcha.
I'm not young, and Bob is 13 years older than I am. So he was in his first band when I was born. So I'm 67. He just turned 80, and Bob Hill was a staple around here in the 60s. Played with a lot of the real popular bands and things like that, and with pretty much everybody in town. And then of course he and Eric were both in the Capital City Rockets together, which is how they met. Which was a band that did an album on Elektra Records. It's still available. They had a semi-hit called Breakfast in Bed, and the singer from that band was Jamie Lyons, who sang the singer in the Music Explosion, who did Little Bit of Soul, which was a huge song. Oh yeah. So that's kind of the Eric and Bob thing, which is how Bob ended up in the band after Mike and Hayward got killed. Eric and Bob and Glenn had been playing in a band called Sky King when I met them. They had a girl singer, female singer, named Diane Bassick, and her boyfriend Don Groner played keyboards. And they were like selling out the Sugar. Anywhere they played, it was packed, and they were really, really, really good. So I used to go see them all the time, and that's how I became friends with Glenn and Bob, or Glenn and Eric, and to a certain extent Bob. And then they would come see me. I worked at Whitey Lunzar Music then, which when I called you, I also said I'm quitting the music store. I quit the music store and college the same day to join a band called the Godz. That went over really well with my parents.
I'm sure it did.
Anyway, they would come down to Whitey Lunzar's and visit and buy sticks and stuff, drumsticks and crap, and they heard me play one day, and that's kind of how all that began. They asked me to if I wanted to play some songs with them. We had a rehearsal place in the basement of the store, which was right down on Main Street here, East Main, 124 East Main, and we went down there and played a couple of different times, and they said, well, this is what we're doing. We're leaving Sky King, and we're doing this band called the Godz, and, we'd like to have you come with us. And I said, okay. And 2 weeks later, I quit my job and quit OSU to be to become a rock star.
And doing it.
Yeah. Well, it was what I always wanted to do. I mean, it was my dream from like every other guy my age that's a musician, from when you saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. That was pretty much it. You pretty much decided what you wanted to do for the rest of your life at that point in time.
That was definitely me too.
Yeah.
The Ed Sullivan Show thing, the Beatles.
Yeah, it changed a lot of lives, a lot.
Well, and Keith Pickens is here.
Really?
Drummer.
Where
He's
is he?
right here. He's so quiet.
Yeah.
He's so quiet.
He's not quiet
you're
on
tied,
stage.
You're tied to the Godz, and obviously you're here now.
Yeah.
The driving force at the kit, but
It's kind of a weird story. Back in the day, I was in a union variety band that did everything from top 40 to country to current radio crap, and we traveled around the Midwest. But we were based in, the Columbus, Ohio, Newark, Ohio, Lancaster, Ohio area. That's where everybody was from those areas. And we just happened to be the house band at a club out in Buckeye Lake. And I was sick of it. I had traveled for 2 years in a Toyota Corolla with all my shit shoved in the back seat and in the trunk. And I mean, the money was incredible in 1987. It was like $400 a week salary and per diem every day, and which was incredible. But you also played Monday through Saturday, and it was 5 sets a night, which isn't ridiculous to think about now. And then you traveled on Sunday to wherever you were going to the next town. Well, so I'm at home after one of these trips, and I was playing at this club, and I answered an ad on the Trade and Times, which used to be a thing. And it was for a band that was looking for a drummer because their drummer was leaving to go do something else. And it ended up being a band called the Boys from Nowhere, which Mark Chatfield played guitar in. I never met Mark Chatfield at any rehearsal for 3 months. To me, I just thought I didn't think it was a real human because I never met him. Show up at the very first show at Chelsea's down on High Street. And here he comes and walks in. He immediately goes, "You must be some guy named Keith." And I'm like, "You're Mark Chatfield." And we did the show, and it was great. I learned my very first Godz song on stage that night in front of however many people they could shove in that place because it was packed, largely because of him. And, he literally turns around and he goes, "Play this." Boom, pop, boom, boom, pop. And I'm like, okay. And that was 714. And that's how that started.
you got your lesson.
On stage in front of probably 150, 200 people, but it worked.
It's so rock and roll,
Yeah.
though.
He has absolutely no memory of this either.
No, I don't.
No memory of it.
Well, it's funny because once again, here I am. I'm taking over here again. Sorry.
No, you're good.
When I was a kid, the place to play here was Valleydale. If you were a local band, man, you wanted to play at Valleydale. That's where everybody cool. I saw Alice Cooper, Valleydale, for God's sake. But everybody played there. O&B, J.D. Blackfoot, all the really cool 60s and early 70s bands. And I never got to play there, but we played there, and the Boys from who'd we open for?
We opened for Scatterbrain.
We opened for
a San Francisco hardcore rock band.
Yeah,
who
we
was
opened
incredible.
Opened for Scatterbrain there. I have no recollection of playing there whatsoever.
It was great.
Now, in my defense, that was not quite getting into the peak of my of alcohol and drug abuse, but it was getting damn close. so there's a certain period of time in there where my memory, I've got a great memory from before that and after that, but there's a period of time in there where
I helped him move once. I helped him move, and he has no recollection of it. Like I showed up with a truck and a trailer, and he's like, "You did not help me move." And I'm like, "Yeah, I even have the address, man." No memory.
Oops.
So, Mark, I hate to put the spotlight on you again, but when you decided to put this group together, for this era, if you will, what did you have any challenges with that process? Who you were going to get, and maybe the scene in regard to bring it to fruition?
Well, Keith and I, Keith and I have our history with the Boys from Nowhere, but then then basically it went nowhere for a couple of decades.
You stayed in touch. That's about it.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. Then the guy that we played with in the Boys from Nowhere was doing some solo stuff, and they record in Grove City at Sonic Lounge with Joe Veers, who everybody records with, and Joe was part of the project.
I was the drummer.
He was the drummer, and his guitar player from American Dog and Rat Bastard Syndicate, Steve Theotto, was also part of it. And they called me in Las Vegas and asked if I'd be interested in contributing some stuff to this. So basically, they sent me some tracks, and I put them on my recording stuff at home, and I made up some parts for these songs that. It's kind of the way this band works. Everybody gives somebody something, and then they come up with something, and it's nothing that you would have ever thought about in your life. It's like, where the hell did that come from? But that's the beauty of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we did that stuff, and then at that point in time, we haven't talked about Rosie, and we don't need to, but that's the band I did after the Godz that was really, really big around here, and blah, 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 blah. That band used to get together and do reunion shows with Julie. Julie is here. Hadn't said a word, but Julie is here. Say hi, Julie.
Hello.
Okay. So Julie sings in that band with us, but that band wasn't going to play anymore due to the band politics that band always had. Not to mention, 2 people live in Florida. One guy lives in Las Vegas. One guy died, and another guy lives in Columbus. So that kind of put a stop to that. Eric was still alive at that time, but the Godz weren't doing anything, and honestly, the Godz hadn't been anything that should have been called that for at least 15 years. Yeah. The last band that was probably worthy of being that band was the band he had in 2004. And I actually went with them to play in Amsterdam at the Sweden Rock Festival there at the invitation of the Rock Festival. But so anyway, I had this concept to do a band doing Godz songs and Rosie songs, and it was going to be called Godz and Rosies, and it did exist. We came here. It was Julie, Keith, me, a bass player named Jim Miller, who played in Shock 2 here for years and years and years, who also lives in Florida now, and Joey C. Jones from Shock 2 and Sweet Sauvage, who's also passed away, unfortunately. And we did a couple of rehearsals here, and it just sounded. Ed Means, who was in Rosie for a long, long time, came to one of the rehearsals, and he looked up at me after we played a couple of songs. He goes, "Fuck Rosie."
It was big.
It sounded really good. Everybody done their homework, and it sounded. Julie and Joey sounded freaking awesome together, and. At that, I have a history with Bob Seger from 1983 up until 2011, and we parted ways in mid 2011, and I thought I would never do it again. I just thought I'd never do it again. So we get this Godz and Rosies thing going. We book 2 shows at the Al Rosa, which sell out like immediately, and then I get a call from the Seger organization, and they said, "Hey, Bob wants you to come back out." And I went, "Oh God!" I wasn't going to do it, but my wife and my mom kind of talked me into it. So they said, "Take the money, go." So that's what I did, and so Godz and Rosies had to be shelved because I had to go do it for the money, but and in the meantime. Joey passed away.
Yep.
So we had no singer. So after the Seger tour, I called Keith and I said, "Dude, let's do the Godz." So I came here and we tried a bass player that Keith plays with, and it didn't feel real good the first time. And then the second time we did it, it didn't get any better. And we're going, this just isn't working.
It's been too much work.
Yeah, it's just a thing. There's a thing there that you gotta have to be able to do this. It's the easiest, or it's the hardest easy music you've ever heard in your life. It is hard to play this stuff right. It's easy music, but it's hard to play right.
There's a whole thing, not to interrupt you, there's a whole thing about that none of us were prepared for. And I played with Eric, I've played with him, but when you start digging into the material that you think is just this super easy, this is going to be no problem, could not be more wrong. And it has ruined all of us. He even told us, he goes, this is going to fuck everything up for every other band you're in. When you're in the boot camp of what the Godz is, and then you go back to your respective bands other places, if you don't have an enormous amount of patience, you want to fucking kill everybody, because it's just not, this is a level that I've played music a lot in my life. I've not been at this level of awareness. It's not talent, it's awareness of everyone else's job. You stay in your fucking lane and do your part, you serve the band. And man, when you play with other people that don't do that, and I remember coming back to my first couple of rehearsals after we had taken a break after the end of 2022 when we did that big show. And we came back, I'm like, I don't even want to do this anymore because it's not this, but the other bands. I'm like, this is driving me fucking nuts. So that's the very first thing we told him when he came in. I'm like, dude, just be prepared.
Yeah.
So getting Keith and I decided to do this. We're trying the bass player, and then I think Keith already told. Well, you didn't tell it on air, did you?
No.
Okay, so Keith's gonna have to tell another story. First off, though, the next person I called after Keith was Julie, because I love having Julie in any project that I mean she did the other project too, the Divins thing. I didn't want to say his name, but she did that too. But I like having Julie. Julie gets me, and I like to think that I get her. She and I sing really, really well together. We sing
Really
a lot
well.
of backups, and it's like painless. It's like so natural, and it's just easier to do with people that you know, love, and respect. So Julie was my next call, and she'll go, whatever you got going, let me know. We're doing it.
I know. I told you on my podcast with Ben, like, he's got me in his back pocket. So anytime he wants to pull, I'm like, I will go.
Okay.
He calls me. Yes. The answer is yes.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
I love you too.
I thought you had me in your back pocket, to be honest. And you probably do.
I'll take that too.
We're sharing a pocket here.
Okay.
So Keith, now Keith, hold on.
Go ahead.
We also hired Eric Mock again, who seemed to be the what's the word I want to say?
Logical.
Thank you. The logical choice, because he had been in the Godz for a long, long time and played with me when we did the live album. So he was the logical choice for the band. And he was in the band for a while, and after our first gig, we all decided, him included, that this really wasn't what he wanted to do. And so we wrestled with that for a long time, going, who are we going to get? We tried a couple of people. The reason I didn't ask Steve earlier is, honestly, I didn't think he'd want to do it. He knows how I can be, and I don't think that he wanted to subject himself to me, and I'm not like that much anymore. We're really, honestly, a democracy.
Very
There's
much.
no shouting and screaming and big there's little attitudes here and there, but there's no big attitudes, and so. After trying a couple other people, I called Steve and said, would you be interested in doing this? And he goes, well, yeah. And he learned the song, came to rehearsal, and bam, done. It was
Immediate.
It was natural. It was meant to be. So we're super happy to have him. Super easy to work with. He and I play really well together, and the amount of compliments that we get from doing the first gig with the other guy to playing with Steve is amazing. It's like, I can't believe how well this fits. It's just, perfect, blah, 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 blah. So we get a lot of that. But anyway, now Keith's got to tell you the story about Doug.
So
and why Doug's in the band.
I do session.
I'm sorry.
Salve.
Salve dandy.
To treat your wounds.
Salve.
Bass and vocals.
So I do session work for Joe Veers sometimes, and
Hi, Joe.
Doug's got a band that's on hiatus at the moment, and they had a drummer that travels a bunch and could not get to the session. Doug had written a bunch of material, and they were putting it out. Band's called The Deplorables. And so he reaches out to me, he talks to Joe. Joe reaches out to me and says, hey, Doug's got some songs he needs recorded. Would you be willing to do it? I'm like, oh, absolutely. Briefly worked with Doug, I think, 5 or 6 years before that for 10 minutes.
Well, and what's crazy is even before that, Keith invited me to his house to have steak.
That's right.
And
for a band that never happened.
A band that never happened with Gino and
Jeff Tong.
Yeah.
And
we were going to do something many, many years ago, and Gino got called back out, I think, with Kill.
Ron Keel.
Yeah.
So anyway, long story short, I go to a pre-production rehearsal to do this thing with Doug, to learn these songs, and that took all of 10 minutes because they were very well written. You're going to hear a lot of that stuff work its way into what we do because it is very similar to Godz material. Well, anyway, he's warming up and he's playing bass. I never knew he was a bass player.
Yeah,
this is
nor
right.
did I.
Yeah,
I
neither
had
did
no
Mark.
idea. No
So
clue.
this is around the time that we were working with this other bass player singer, and it wasn't going anywhere. So we're like scratching our heads. What are we going to do? I go do this thing with Doug, and Mark and I text way more than we talk on the phone. It's almost always texts. And I do this thing with Doug, and Doug starts playing Go Away or something, and I'm like, holy shit, really? And I'm like, what else do you know? And he goes, I know the whole damn catalog, which wasn't necessarily a lie.
You go, see the scar?
Yeah, look at this scar. So, where was the salve back then? Anyway, so I leave there, and I'm almost like shook by it because it was Eric. It was the bass playing that is required for this band, very pocket-oriented bass playing. And he self-admittedly is not a bass player, not anymore. He started off that way, correct?
Yep.
But he hadn't done it for a really long time, but he was doing it out of necessity in the Deplorables. Well, I called Mark like that evening, and I'm like, you're not gonna fucking believe this. I'm like, you know Doug Savage? And he goes, you mean Doug Savage? I'm like, yes, Doug Savage. I'm like, I just left. So I told him the story. I said, I just left this pre-production rehearsal, and I'm telling you, he's the guy. And he goes, fucking really? I'm like, I swear to God. So we set it up for like 2 or 3 days later, and he came, and I mean, it was 10 minutes, and we were like, dude, yeah. I think Mark, you offered him the gig right away.
Yeah. Now, when Keith took me by surprise, because Doug and I have known each other a long, long, long time. We've always gotten along just fine. We're all, Al Rosa, hangout kind of people, and all the other places we used to hang. But I always pictured Doug was in Nasty Action,
Nasty Action, Love Gun,
and some bands, and he was always kind of like a big hair Vince Neely kind of guy. That's really took on that kind of persona, and that's how I always envisioned him. And I'm thinking, this guy? Come on, I knew he could sing, but I had no idea he could play bass, and that was the persona that I couldn't get out of my head.
Correct.
So that's why it took me so much by surprise. It wasn't because I didn't like him or anything. We've been friends for decades.
And everybody thought that. It's not just him, But the scene in general, because that's what he always did, and he did it very well. But the scene in general wasn't prepared. He's a fucking chameleon. So, but he just came in and he owned it.
Yeah.
Well, when I first seen that Doug was doing the Godz thing, I figured I knew when Mark was coming back to town that he was going to put something together, but I didn't know exactly what it was, because I honestly thought Mark was coming back to play, because every time I had spoke to him when he was in Vegas, he just said there wasn't any local gigs to play in Vegas, and there wasn't any room for it. But when I saw that they were doing it with Doug, I just couldn't believe it, because I knew Doug. I think I was the first person Doug met when he moved here from Kentucky. I worked at a stockroom out at Eastland Mall, and Doug, I seen coming up and down the mall every once in a while, and he stopped me and he goes, "You look like you're into rock and roll. Where does everybody hang out at?" And I said, "Well, I'm playing up at the Alrosa this weekend." And I was playing with Shock 2, and that's kind of how I met Doug. But yeah, when I found out that he was in the Godz thing, I was just like, "You got to be kidding me!" It's because it's not an insult or anything. It just I couldn't see him in that spot, because what I'd known him as before. Him and I always were pretty good friends.
Oh, yeah.
We were always good friends. Where our bands were like enemies, though. But him and I were like, they used to get on my case because, "What are you talking to Doug Savage for?" Yeah.
You know what it is? It's we can't get that damn album cover out of our head.
Yeah.
With what band was that?
That was Love Gun.
Love
with
Gun
big white boots and
with the big white boots and spiked hair. Yeah, you just can't erase that. You can't unsee that.
Their big song was "The Bitch Is Hot."
Subject matter.
Hold on one second. So, Sav's adaptability then, right, to tap into that inner DNA that you physically have, enabled you to get into making this that missing big piece, right, to bring this together.
And it's really crazy because again, coming out. Closer?
Yeah.
Coming from Kentucky and a country bluegrass basically background is where I came out of, and I had we had to run an antenna up on top of a mountain about 300 feet away just to get one channel when I was a kid. That's just the way it was. So I wasn't really in touch at all with rock and roll. And my family all comes from the country background, and I have very successful country musicians that are in my family. And so I can remember when I was 5-6 years old, on Ricky Skaggs' porch playing bluegrass music with Patty Loveless, which is her actual name's Patty Ramey. So, and Loretta Lynn, all these people, these were people that I grew up with and was there all the time. So my country layout was pretty automatic. If I wanted to stay in country music, I would have been able to and probably done very well. And, but there was this little music store called Ray's Music where I was from. And I went there, and there was just 2 albums that was sitting there, and I looked at them, and the first album had a bunch of guys with makeup on, and I was like, well, that's very interesting. And the other album had 4 guys on motorcycles on it. And I was like, that's interesting also. I said, Ray, I'll take both of them. Well, it was Kiss, and it was the Godz. So these are the first 2 albums I ever purchased with my own money. And so it was crazy when you fast forward up to 1988, when I walked out. I was in Nasty Action at that time, and we had just done a big show. We were doing 4 nights a week at the Outroad, so that's how Rick used to run things. And, basically Thursday through Sunday night. And Sunday night was normally an all-age or whatever like that. So we were playing. I come off stage, and Eric Moore's in the dressing room. And I was like, okay. So he pats the seat beside him. Come over and sit by me, boy. And I'm like, okay. So he had a bottle of Jack Daniels and he had a joint. And at that point in time, I didn't smoke. Okay, I didn't smoke till I met Eric Moore. And so basically, he sits down, he lights us up, he opens up the bottle, we're drinking. He said, "I need you to meet me at Tommy Thunder's Tuesday, 6 o'clock." I don't know who Tommy Thunder is. I don't know what's really going on here at the time. And I said, "Okay, Eric, that's fine." And then, so I did. He gets there, he's got songs and stuff. He said, "These are songs I wrote. This is going to be your demo, and you're going to Hollywood." That's how this all started with that thing. Moving forward, yes, I was totally glam. I actually wanted to be Vince Neal my whole career until I actually moved in with Vince Neal. And then, and that kind of, that was you ever have the gold statue and and it falls? And you go, "I don't want to be Vince Neal anymore." But, back before that, I really did. I was wanting to be that blonde glam guy that just did things. And it was so funny because I had some really, really great opportunities before this band of being able to play in some pretty big bands. I got to do some shows with probably the Motley Crue of England, which was called Tiger Tails. And I got to sing in that band also with Ace Fincham. And, that's why these guys are saying, how did this fit the picture? And going backwards to how this fit the picture, basically, is that back when Eric used to come and check on me and collect rent for the place I was staying with out there, let's be honest. Me and him used to go to a place called FM Station. I know Mark's familiar with Philly McNasty's FM Station. It was in the Valley and so forth. So when Eric would come out, he would stay a couple weeks at a time. And basically, me and him would go out and we would do an acoustic gig for tips on a Tuesday night at FM Station. And he always made me play bass, and he always made me sing, and he played guitar. And the songs that he would sing, he always made me do the Godz songs, but the songs he would sing would be some crazy Hank Williams tune or something. He would just go off on these tangents of whatever, and probably write stuff while we were there. I don't know, But that's kind of how this mixed in. And being a hillbilly, I am, and he's a hillbilly. He was. It just seemed like it all just came together. When it needed to come together, it was just natural. And to be honest with you, being in the Godz, it's been the most natural band I think I've ever been in my whole 40-year career. It was just something that just came. And it just felt. It felt right. It felt really good. And I tell you, I can't be any happier right now than in where I'm at in music.
And just so you know, I don't have this picture anymore. I wish somebody would find one and give me one. But Eric Moore had big hair at one point too.
Oh yeah.
So when he was in Tree, a band called Tree around here, he had big hair. Then he had the Eric Moore group, and he had his hair all teased out like this. So he had this great big, bouffant-y looking kind of thing. So
yeah, he looked like Lizzie Borden.
Yeah, or what's his face from Madam X?
Godzilla.
Chris Dolber from Madam X.
Yeah.
If you ever seen the cover of that, that's what Eric's hair looked like at that point. So
wow.
So yeah, that was in your DNA. That was in your DNA too, the big hair.
It all flashes.
So, there we go.
Well, you do what a lot of times what the scene is doing. What's going to work. So in the '80s, if you played rock and roll, the hair thing was very important. Because I can remember, if somebody didn't have the hair, you weren't interested in playing. You weren't interested in playing with them.
Yeah, the look.
Yeah, you had to have the look. So you're always adjusting to the scene a lot of the time. What is going on. Now, if you ask me what's going on today, I have no idea, no idea whatsoever. But
really, it is. It is pretty diverse. Yeah. That's a good thing. This band's keeping rock and roll definitely alive. No doubt about it. Just as a someone who witnessed the show, someone who enjoys the new music, let's talk about the new music. How do you guys feel about the music that you're producing?
I'm very proud of it.
Yeah.
The big deal for me was to keep the same feel of the original stuff, going all the way back to that first record, but we didn't want to copy it or completely emulate it. But you can't fake what you are.
Right.
That's the biggest thing. And once he started bringing riffs in, again, he touched on this earlier. Him or Doug, somebody touched on earlier about how organic it was. And I've written music with 100 people. This is the easiest band that I've ever been fortunate enough to create music with, because nobody gets pissed off if their idea isn't the right one, because everybody really does want the song to be what it can be. And so that's just what we do. And I think that the batch of songs speaks for itself. Even we come, he brought in the idea of doing Hard Road, which is a cover. It's perfect. It really is. It sounds like a fucking Godz song when we were done with it. So, I mean, from my standpoint, I couldn't be happier with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I rarely listen to stuff that I recorded. Just like no offense, I'll never listen to this podcast. I've never listened to any live interview I've done because I hate the sound of my own voice. I can't stand it. And then I'm always thinking, God, that was stupid. Why did you say that? And then I'll leave here and go, why didn't I say that instead of this? I like to beat myself up. But I'm the same way with the music. It's the first Godz album was different because that's like the first time I've ever been in a recording studio. So of course you're listening to that going, man, that's really freaking cool. I just made an album. But I don't make a habit of listening to all this stuff. This stuff I've listened to a lot. And when we rehearse, everybody talking about the iPhone thing, everybody's got their iPhone up there and you just record, on the iPhone, and then everybody goes home and listens to it and goes, yeah, that's working, that's not working, let's try this part. Somebody will come in with a completely new part to add to the song, and we do that. I mean, Keith is right. Nobody really gets mad if their part isn't used, and I poo-poo more of my own parts than these guys poo-poo. I'm super critical about it. But
we've had to talk him into not throwing shit away.
So what my concept was for this was the first Godz album still stands on its own 2 feet. Could it have been better? You can tell, especially with me, you can tell my immaturity in my playing on that record. There are people that disagree, but I can hear it. I can, and my singing, which I hate. I hate my singing voice. I sing 2 songs on that record. But that record has 2 distinct sides on it. It's got the Eric Moore side, which is, Go Away and Baby I Love You and that kind, and Guaranteed, which is a Glenn Cadeline song. But it's still a straight, almost Sha-Na-Na-y kind of, 50s doo-wop-y kind of song. The other side, the second side of the record is Cross Country, which is mine, and Under the Table, and then the cover we did of Candy's Going Bad, the Golden Earring song. That side of the album sounds different than the first side. It all works together, but there's a distinct difference there. Then the second album I just completely hate. We got thrown into the studio a lot faster than we thought we were. We weren't prepared. Our producer walked out on us. Eric ended up producing the record. We were all fucked up on Quaaludes all the time and cocaine, and it sounds like it. Not that all the songs are terrible. They're not. It's just a subpar record. The next album that I really liked was Mongolians, which is Eric did. I was off doing my own thing. Eric was doing the Eric Moore band, then the Godz again, and he joined up with Freddie Salem from the Outlaws, and they started writing songs together, and they did they got signed to a label in Europe called Heavy Metal America, and did an album called I'll Get You Rockin', which is actually a really, really good record. But you can tell Freddie's writing influence anyway, because it took on a much heavier, and this is a guy that played with the Outlaws. It takes on a much heavier kind of thing, like "Hey You" is not something like that Eric would have done, and even to "Chest Fever," which we redid. It's a live cut on our record, but that album morphed into. They asked me to rejoin the band, and so I came back and rejoined, and that's when we did Mongolians, which is most of "I'll Get You Rockin'" with 3 different songs on it, 2 of which I play on, Mongolians and Criminal Mind, which once again, you can tell Freddie's writing influence very much so in those songs. They are heavier, they're a more refined version, it's not as raw, but they're great songs. So my concept was to be somewhere between the first album and Mongolians. And I think we hit the nail on the head. I mean, "Chest Fever" wasn't even really, it's one of my favorite songs of all time anyway. But it wasn't originally supposed to be on this record. But when we listen back to the live thing that we did, our first gig at King of Clubs, I mean, there's almost zero fixing on that. It was that good. Actually, the whole night was really good. Yeah. But it was that good, we went, you know what, let's put a live bonus track on that record. And to be honest, we wanted to get something out. And we really didn't have a lot of songs. We hadn't had a lot of time to write songs. And that's why it's an EP instead of an LP, because I didn't want to wait a year to release something while we're still writing and refining. It's not the writing, it's the refining of the songs. You can come in with an idea, but and then if you go off and record it right away, 6 months later, you're going, man, we should have fucking done this, we should have done that, blah blah. And we like to refine this stuff as much as possible before we do it, and get some stage time with them. So the short version of this story is, I'm really proud of this record. I'm really proud of the way everybody played on it. I'm really proud of the writing on it. I'm really proud of the production on it. And people are going to love it or they're not, but I am really, really happy with this record. That was the short version of that really long ass story. And I could have just said that and been done with it, but I'm getting paid to talk here. No, I'm just kidding. Good.
Do you have thoughts, Julie?
Huh?
On the record?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love how, and talking to the whole deplorables situation. Like I'm in Godz and Rosie's, and then I'm singing with Sav on his writing and that material. And then, Mark asked me to do this, and I got to be in the studio and take part in it, and I'm so proud of it. And I can't believe you guys put my name like the Godz are. Steve Mitchell, Keith Pickens, Mark Chatfield, Sav Ramey, Julie Neal. I'm so honored.
Well, you are.
You are.
I'm so
You're
honored.
as much part of this as all of us are.
Thank you.
This is a total democracy, and we really talk about things before we do, whether it's music, gigs, whatever, and not everybody agrees all the time, but there's, like I said, there's no hissy fits. I threw one at a rehearsal once and walked out, but that was before Steve Mitchell was in the band.
Yeah, that didn't have anything to do with the current climate.
No, and they didn't know if I was coming back or not.
I literally chased him to his car, and he was already driving away.
But yeah, that's as close as it's come. But
Steve, you have comments on the current record?
I think the album's awesome, to be honest with you. I really think these guys did a great job on it. My name is on there, but I joined the band after it was already recorded. So I think they did a great job on it, to be honest with you. I enjoy playing the tunes and everything, so,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The music is it fair to say you talk about refinement, on a song-by-song basis, but the performance or the material is kind of a refinement of the past, right? You talked about when you were young, Mark, you were who you were then, but you are who you are today.
Yeah,
and there's a refinement process. But if you look at the history of each of you, bringing this music together, it really has that extra DNA. It has that extra history, and it comes together for this, and it's unique.
I have to say, like, I've learned so much about everybody listening today, listening to these stories that I didn't know. But there's a sense of like things coming full circle as I listen to the stories and the background and the legacy.
Yeah, this might not have worked 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
It's working now. And the thing, and Keith brought this up the other day, you know, I play in a couple of other bands, and one of the bands I play in is, well, both of them are you know, pretty kind of famous. But, you know, when people pay $200 for a concert ticket or more, 2,000, whatever, you know, they come wanting, like the Eagles do, man. They play one hit after another, bam, 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 bam. One of the people I play with likes to experiment with the new material too, and we always joke about it. That's when everybody gets up and goes and gets a T-shirt and a beer. You know, that's merch sales when you're doing the new songs. Every gig we've played that we've done the new songs, and we actually did a surprise job at under an assumed name, we called our band Ron Jeremy's Day Job, which that's our record label, RJDJ. We played it at El Dorado's, a free show announced as that band, and it was to showcase the new material and play it on stage. So our first set, we did the new record
In order.
In order. And then the second set, we played some old stuff. But the stuff went over awesome. Yeah. And even when we play, people are really responding well to the new songs. I watch. You know, I'm going, somebody going to the bar now? Is somebody going, that fucking sucks? They like the new songs because they fit so well within the concept of what we're doing. And people I'm just really surprised. Pleasantly surprised. You don't know, you know, when you put something out, you don't know. When you play it live, you don't know. Some songs don't translate live like they do on the records. And a couple of the gigs we did do Crazy Raised Me Right because I didn't think it was translating as well as it should. And then we worked on it rehearsal some, and now it's people's like favorite song. Yeah. Of course, it's got the hookiest lyric, and you know, "Crazy Raised Me Right" is like one of the hookiest lyrics I've ever heard in my life. And everybody can relate with that, you know, especially our crowd. Oh yeah, that's me. Oh, they wrote that about me. But anyway, you know, I pay attention to that, and people are really liking it. So that just, you know, makes it that much easier. We have not. It's hard because we have to do the classic. You know, we have to do the songs people that have been around this band since the 70s. They want to hear certain songs, and we can't possibly do them all and do all this material too. So there's a very fine line there from what we can drop but we don't want to drop any of these right now. If some of them didn't go over, we would. You know, we go, let's put one of the old songs in here because people don't really like that one. But that's not the case so far.
Right.
So
I have to tell a brief story based on that. We did our show at the King of Clubs in 2022. Before that, we always do a warm-up show. And we always do it up in Wapakoneta, Ohio, at a roadhouse called Route 33 Rhythm and Brews. We built our set list. And again, democracy. We built a set list that we all agree on and we all liked it. There was one song missing from the set list that is an older song that everybody likes. We didn't do it. A guy flew all the way from Colorado to hear that song. That guy was pissed. He was unpleased.
Yeah.
And he reached out to let me know. That's fucking awful. We didn't even talk to him after the show because everybody was beat to shit after that show. So the guy gets his Uber and leaves. Loved the show. Not pleased he didn't hear his favorite song. reaches out. I come to our next rehearsal, and I'm like, we fucking have to play Go Away at the King of Clubs.
Oh
the
my
guy
God.
flew back
From Colorado.
from Colorado, and yes, we played it.
One example of the machine, right?
Insane.
One of
Yeah.
Lord knows how many, right, across the globe that
crazy.
really, adhere to this band.
It's funny because this band does have a following in Europe, especially the Scandinavian countries, which is why we went and did the Sweden Rock Festival. But the band itself never played. We never toured overseas ever. I'm hoping this band will, but that remains to be seen.
So let's talk about the future of the Godz from this point. This is January 2024. Where's this band going?
Well, I heard an interview many years ago about, and then it's always been preached, if you've heard any of the sermons from back in the past, God's rock and roll ain't dead. Correct?
Correct.
Okay? I heard the thing, there's nobody like the Godz. It's been on several interviews, right, like that. Well, that stands true today. There is no one like the Godz, and there probably will never be anyone like the Godz in Columbus, Ohio. And that's what we're going to continue on. That's going to be our mission statement for forever. The God's rock and roll ain't dead. And we're just going to keep going, and we're just going to keep going as long as we all can, And we're going to write songs. We're going to play shows. Like Mark said, Mark's got some gigs coming up also, but we're already booking a summer tour for the Godz. And, we're going to try to do another record as soon as we can, but we're in no hurry. There's no hurry right now. We like we said, we like to digest what we're doing and make sure that that it's what we want to put out, for people, and so what we'll continue to do, But the Godz are alive and well, and we're we're better than ever. We're ready to go.
You are ready to go, and you're doing it, all of you. It's again, we cherish the moments of this past show that was live. We do listen to the new material, and it again, it's alive and well. There's no question about it. It's good to hear too that you're planning a future. And Mark, you're busy.
Well,
just to say a few things, right?
Once again, in my defense, everybody in this band is busy.
Yeah, we're all in other
Yeah.
bands.
Last year, last year when we're trying to book everybody around, we have to book around everybody else's schedule.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is. Now, unfortunately, we didn't have to book around mine because I wasn't doing anything. Well, now I am. So we always take, we play the Thanksgiving show. Have for the past 2 years, and then we take a month off because this band works hard. We do. We rehearse, we write. I mean, we're really serious about what we do. We work our asses off, and I think it shows. I mean, the refinement on stage shows how hard we work. But what we're doing now is, our as Doug said, our goal now is we're going to start the writing process again. While I have to go tour for a little bit, I'm playing mostly weekends anyway, so my weekdays will be pretty free, and then we'll just do some. We can only play the problem. I don't want to say it's a problem, but the situation with this band is we can only play. There's only so many places we can play where people actually know us. I mean, it was a regional band, and it's just. Plus, it's not cost effective to go to like Texas for one show. You really can't do that unless you're making a lot of money or just want to lose a bunch of money. So Texas was one of the places the Godz were really big. So there's only a handful of places that we can play where people will come see us. So if we play those places too much, we'll burn this out really fast. So we have to be very selective. That when we did this, we never envisioned, unless we would pick up a tour that made financial sense, opening for somebody or something of that, or go to Europe for a couple of weeks or something. That would be different. But but we never had the intention of playing out live other than a handful of times every year, because that's all really we can do and draw a bunch of people. So in the meantime, we're starting to think about booking some summer stuff and some outdoor stuff, which we didn't get to do last year. And the writing process will start. These guys are actually rehearsed without me. My February is screwed. I can't do much. And they get together at the rehearsal place and put down ideas, record them, send them to me, and then I will put my input in, and I'll do the same with them. I'm one of those guys with my iPhone. My memo thing has like 500 plus snippets of me playing on the couch with little licks, which is how some of these songs came about.
Yep.
You put 2 or 3 things together and you got a song. And but that's time consuming to go through that, not to mention all the shit you delete and go, man, that was stupid, or worse, you can't remember how you played it. I have to give myself
Hence the iPhone.
Yeah, I have to go, this is open D, open drop D, blah, 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 blah. And I started it on this, because I just can't remember how I played something and I can't reproduce it. So that's basically, hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have another, a full album out and do some shows.
That's awesome to hear.
So.
Awesome to hear. Absolutely. Well, I think that we've covered a lot here, but I think it's representative of the Godz in that there's longevity here. There's a lot of history that's coming together, and there is a future.
Yes.
Yep.
So this is
can I plug the other bands here?
You may.
Okay. Go see Julie Neal, the Queen of Westerville.
I don't know how I got that title.
I made
but
it
I'll
up
take it. I'll take it.
in Late Night Alibi.
Yes.
I don't know if Doug's
Fantastic.
planning on doing Deplorables dates or not, but if he is, Doug will be in the Deplorables. Keith will be in Rat Bastard Syndicate. You see them playing, and Steve Mitchell in Jackass Genius, all playing locally around here. And I'm currently out with Grand Funk Railroad, so if you see them playing anywhere, come see us.
Yes.
That's it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm going to do some riding with Bruce Kulick if he sends me $100. That's about it.
I love it.
Shots have been fired.
All right.
I had to, Mark.
Right on. I'm not going to tell him about this one.
Okay, guys. Episode 48, Columbus Local Podcast. Thank you so much. It was an honor.
Thank you for having
to have
us.
you here, and
Thank
looking
you for
forward
having
to
us.
looking forward to the future dates. And
Your apartment is the bomb.
This condo's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate sharing it and taking advantage of this, because this is Columbus music, Columbus-based music is the theme of the podcast, and it's kind of the DNA for what's going on here. But so many are embracing it, and it's really truly an honor to have all of this history of Columbus-based music in the Godz represented here at our dining room table to do this episode, and it's really an honor. It really was, guys.
We appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Len.
All right. Well, episode 48, the Godz. Thanks for listening.
See ya.